For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to StratNews Global. You are on our evening program, The Gist. I'm Nitin Gokhale. So on The Gist this evening, we are discussing the situation in Pakistan in view of what happened in the blast that killed, or a suicide bombing that killed more than 70 people in that security setup of Pakistan on Monday. And joining me to discuss the situation in Pakistan and overall the Afghan-Pakistan situation is a familiar guest, familiar face on our program, Ramanathan Kumar, a former R&AW Special Secretary and a specialist on terrorism, counter-terrorism, and especially Afghanistan and Pakistan. Thank you for joining on this program and welcome.
Thank you very much for inviting me again, Nitin. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So, first up, this blast in this security setup in Pakistan on Monday, a suicide bombing and claimed by the TTP, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, is something that the Pakistani security establishment will view with a lot of concern. What's your first take on that?
Yes, it is a matter of grave concern for them, Nitin. As you know, the TTP attacks the Pakistani state and the Pakistani establishment, the Pakistani armed forces. And this has the TTP, of course, its formation goes back to the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks when the Pakistani armed forces went into the tribal areas of Pakistan adjoining Afghanistan to hunt out, take out Al-Qaeda. And in the process, I mean, the tribal groups there which had given shelter to Al-Qaeda, the Pakistani army earned the enmity of these groups, and that is what really led to the emergence of the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, which is mainly made of Pashtun groups which attack the Pakistani military. And there was a full-fledged Tehreek-e-Taliban movement in Pakistan in 2008, 2009, which spread beyond the federally administered tribal areas as they were known then to the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province.
That's right.
And there were some places like Swat, which were particularly sort of badly affected. And the TTP insurgency had actually almost reached the borders of Islamabad. And then, of course, the army had to mount a full-fledged operation against the TTP. And then, of course, to cut a long story short, in a sense, the military or the army had gained the upper hand over the TTP. There was a major campaign against the TTP in 2014 by the army. It was called Operation Zarb-e-Azb.
Right.
And then there was a lull. And paradoxically, it was after the takeover by the Afghan Taliban in Kabul in 2021 that there has been a spectacular resurgence of the TTP in Pakistan. And since late 2021, there has been a rising crescendo of attacks against the Pakistani army. The Pakistani state has tried both the options, the softer option, and
Of negotiating with them?
Absolutely. Particularly the Imran Khan government, as most of us are aware. Imran Khan had a soft spot for Taliban groups.
Right.
And in fact, he had famously said when the Afghan Taliban came to power in Kabul in August 2021, that the shackles of slavery had been broken. And then Pakistan tried actually to use the Afghan Taliban to kind of negotiate with the TTP, because after the 2014 operations, as I said, the TTP had actually run away and most of their leaders had been based in Afghanistan. So when Pakistan's so-called friends, the Afghan Taliban, came to power, the then DGISI, Faiz Hamid, and the Pakistan Army hoped that the Afghan Taliban, which shares very close ideological affinities and bonds with the TTP, would sort of act as a mediator and bring the TTP to the negotiating table. But what seems to have happened is that, the TTP seems to have used this opportunity, this breathing space which was provided to them by the negotiations, to regroup and then come back hard at Pakistani establishment once again. So 2022 and now 2023 have been very bad years for the Pakistan Army as far as the blowback is concerned.
Clearly, this is a blowback, and clearly the gloating that was there, or the kind of glee with which the Pakistani deep establishment was behaving when the Taliban took control of Afghanistan, has been clearly misplaced in that sense. And now with even the Taliban not favorably disposed towards the Pakistani army or the establishment, this is a double whammy in a sense. So where does this go from here? What does the Pakistani army do in this situation?
So they are indeed caught between a rock and a hard place. One doesn't say this out of any sense of schadenfreude, Nitin, but that is the reality. And you're right. I mean, the tensions between the Pakistan army and the Afghan Taliban have also risen because of all this. The Pakistani army has carried out, aerial attacks and drone strikes against suspected TTP hideouts in eastern Afghanistan. And this is, sharply heightened tensions between the Afghan Taliban and Pakistan. So, although, the Pakistani strategists have made tall claims about, about Pakistan going into Afghanistan and finishing off the job there, that is easier said than done. The terrain is very difficult. Nobody knows that better than Pakistan. So there are limits to the amount of pressure that they can put on the Afghan Taliban. So the other option is to continue this, approach of leaning on them, nudging them, and, requesting them, so to speak, to bring the TTP to the negotiating table. They have tried to reach out to people like the Afghan Interior Minister, Sirajuddin Haqqani,
Who seems to have some clout to it.
That is right. But all that has simply not worked. So it is a very difficult situation for the Pakistan army. And perhaps they might have to use more kinetic options as they used in 2014. But then that is again absolutely
leading to more violence and more blowback.
Absolutely. So this is indeed a worst case scenario for Pakistan that is playing out. A lot of people had, there were voices within Pakistan itself, saner voices,
Yes.
which had said that, if you bring the Afghan Taliban to power in Kabul, if you help in doing that, you may have a sense of victory, but it will be a Pyrrhic victory.
It is.
And it has indeed turned out to be a Pyrrhic victory.
Oh, yes. I remember August, September 2021 doing programs exactly on these lines and saying, in fact, I remember even talking to experts on terrorism in Pakistan that they shouldn't celebrate too early and that's exactly what has come to play in these 2 years or 2.5 years now. This one also comes at a time for Pakistan when its economic and political situation is at its worst, perhaps in its history. Its economy is tottering, its political situation is not at all stable. And then you have others in the United Nations General Assembly as well as in the Security Council putting pressure on Pakistan. So let's take step by step the listing of Abdul Rahman Makki as a terrorist after China held the whip hand, so to say, for some time. But even China relented finally. So what does this lead to? I mean, what did this? How did this happen? Really, this Abdul Rahman Makki's listing as a terrorist.
Well, it is, professionally speaking, a very interesting point, Nitin, the listing of Abdul Rahman Makki. Two or three possibilities suggest themselves. One is, of course, that, the Chinese, frankly, they have been telling Pakistan to clean up their act on terrorism. They have, of course, not done it publicly for obvious reasons. They don't want to embarrass their iron brother or whatever it is.
Yes.
But the Chinese only know only too well as to, what Pakistan's track record is.
Right.
And for them, they also have a very selfish agenda, and one doesn't blame them. All countries have in their
Baxter's interest, as they call it.
Absolutely. So for them, it is basically, tackling the Eastern Turkestan Islamic movement, the ETIM, and China-focused groups operating out of, again, the AFPAC region, the border regions of Afghanistan and Pakistan, and from Afghanistan, and targeting the Xinjiang region. And also, with China getting more deeply sort of entrenched in Pakistan on account of the CPEC, their own Chinese interests inside Pakistan.
Right.
Now, as you know, Pakistan, in fact, raised a separate security division to protect Chinese interests in Pakistan. But there have only Chinese attacks on Chinese interests in Pakistan have only increased with the passage of time. And I think at some point of time, the Chinese possibly have lost patience with Pakistan. They have got somewhat fed up of Pakistan. In fact, the Chinese have often told the Pakistan that, look, if you are incapable of protecting our interests, we will post our own security people inside Pakistan to do the job.
Yes.
And this happened after the attack on the Chinese Confucius Institute, etc. So this, of course, is anathema to Pakistan. It would be a big blow to their prestige.
Right.
But I think that process is also played out in the listing process, the listing of Abdul Rahman Makki. I think the Chinese have also lost patience. There are limits to which they can do.
Tolerate.
Absolutely. Number one.
Yeah.
Secondly, of course, I would think that there would still have been a certain amount of consultation between the Chinese and the Pakistanis on this. And to some point of time, the Pakistanis would also have perhaps reluctantly, grudgingly given the go-ahead. Why would that be? I've been trying to think. And, the interesting thing is, it has often been said that of all the jihadi groups operating in Pakistan, the alphabet soup of jihadi groups,
Exactly.
the Lashkar-e-Toiba is the only group that has never spoken against the Pakistani establishment. But what seems to have happened paradoxically is that in the aftermath of the FATF listing process, some tensions seem to have developed even between the Pakistani army or the ISI and the LET, which is absolutely unthinkable.
Sure.
And, on the social media and all, I'm aware that in the past few months before this listing, Abdul Rahman Makki was one of those who had given some rare speeches against the Pakistani army for saying that they had proceeded against Hafiz Saeed and the others under international pressure and they should not have done that. So this is quite unprecedented. And it's quite possible that the Pakistanis may have agreed to the listing of Abdur Rahman Makki, who is, of course, an old war horse, to teach him a lesson and to send a message to other people in the...
That you can be...
Absolutely, absolutely, if you overstep the line. So it could be a combination of both these factors.
Which is very possible. And there are, of course, 2 or 3 others who are also in the... waiting in the queue to be listed. At least India is waiting in the queue and the international community is waiting in the queue. But that, of course, may happen or may not happen. What is it that one should look at as far as these developments in Pakistan are concerned? We spoke about the politics or the political situation. The economy is in bad shape. Shahbaz Sharif, in the meantime, went and offered talks with India, saying we have learned our lessons. And then, of course, retracted, took 2 steps ahead and then retracted 1 step at least. So what do you make of all this?
So I believe the expression used these days is polycrisis. So Pakistan is indeed facing a polycrisis. There is a political crisis. The political situation is extremely unstable. The 2 assemblies of Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa have been dissolved. General elections are due in October, and they have to be held on time, but the road ahead seems to be rather uncertain, to put it mildly. Then, of course, there is the economic crisis. Pakistan's foreign exchange reserves are down to almost a little over 3.5 billion, which is perhaps less than sufficient to cover 3 weeks worth of imports as against the standard 3 months. And even as we speak, there is an IMF team in Pakistan today to hold finalized discussions on what they call the 9th review of the 7 billion bailout package that Pakistan has sought under the extended fund facility scheme. And of course, there'll have to be major belt tightening measures. There was an artificial cap on the foreign exchange rate, the Pakistani rupee to the US dollar, which the Pakistani finance minister was trying very hard to uphold. The IMF said nothing doing, and just a few days ago that cap was removed and immediately the rupee has plunged. So they'll have to raise fuel prices. They have already raised them. There'll have to be more of this. Energy subsidies will have to be cut. Our sector will have to be reformed. I mean,
But more importantly, the Pakistani army will have to be resized.
Absolutely. I think expenditure on the holy cow, also may have to be touched. And one doesn't know how the Pakistani army will react to that. So it is a very, very forbidding situation. And then, of course, you have the security crisis, which we've been discussing. So it's a polycrisis, as you mentioned. And you were referring to,
Shahbaz Sharif.
Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif and the offer, 1 step forward, 1 step back, and lessons learned supposedly. And what is it that India should expect or be on the lookout for? I think the present situation, in some ways, no parallels are exact. But I think yesterday's blast, for instance, does bear an uncanny resemblance to the December 2014 attack, which took place at the Army Public School in Peshawar. It was a major attack, also carried out by a faction of the TTP. And there were major casualties, mainly children of Pakistani armed forces personnel. And after that, the Pakistani establishment said that they had, similarly as they are doing now, they said that they had learned a lesson, and a national action plan was formulated.
Right.
Now, it was a very detailed national action plan as to how, Pakistan should go after various terrorist groups. And interestingly, they had, categorized these groups into armed groups that operate against the Pakistani establishment, sectarian groups, and armed groups that have not touched the Pakistani state. So groups like the Lashkar-e-Toiba fell in category 3, groups that have not attacked the Pakistani state. This is again like the good Taliban and the bad Taliban. Then there were sectarian groups like the Lashkar-e-Jhangvi, the Sipah-e-Sahaba,
Yes.
etc., etc. And then there were, of course, groups that Pakistan was most concerned, the TTP, the Islamic State, Khorasan province, etc., which had attacked Pakistan.
Yes.
So a very detailed plan was formulated, how these groups would be neutralized, how their financing would be curbed, etc., etc.
Right.
But what happened, move forward to 2016, and, following Prime Minister Modi's visit to Pakistan, you had the Pathankot attack.
Yes, immediately after.
Immediately after that. And that was a real eye-opener. This was despite the National Action Plan being enforced and Pakistan taking what they used. There was another phrase which they used in those times, non-discriminatory action against all groups, despite the categorization.
Sure.
The action was supposed to be non-discriminatory.
Right.
But it was an eye-opener, Nitin, when, the Pathankot attack took place. I don't want to go into too many specifics, but for obvious reasons.
Yes.
But it was quite obvious to us that there were elements in the ISI, or the ISI itself was making a very clear distinction, even at that time, after the Peshawar Army School attack, with a very clear distinction between groups like the TTP and the ISKP and the LET and the Jaish.
Right.
We found that, the Jaish had a detachment in Sialkot, close to the Jammu border.
Yes.
The ISI also had a detachment there. It was all concealed, all subterranean, but it was serious business.
Right.
And when these people were infiltrating across the IB, at times, the Pakistani paramilitary forces, the Rangers, had intercepted some of these people. And then it was the ISI which had gone and quietly got them released and let them carry on with their business.
So they are not given up
Exactly.
their agenda against India.
Exactly. So that is why, Pakistan's credibility really is so low, that when these phrases, are heard about lessons being learnt and all, one really doesn't know how to take them serious, one doesn't really know how seriously they should be taken. And therefore, my own reading is that while Pakistan is caught up in these major difficulties, this doesn't mean that, groups like which are of concern to us have been put out of action, and as you know, there have been very, I think, concerted attempts to revive militancy in the Jammu region.
Right.
Arms landings via drones are taking place regularly. All this cannot happen, in a vacuum. So it should not happen that while our attention is focused on
Any political outreach.
Absolutely. You should not have, an attack of the kind that happened, for instance, in Pathankot.
Right.
Because that will then further complicate things. So that is what I would worry about. Of course, one can say at a broad level that Pakistan's difficulties are such that they cannot afford to have, they cannot afford to antagonize India, and they are in no position to conduct any cross-border attacks, etc. All that is fine. But I think we cannot afford to lower our guard in any manner. The rest, of course, is for Pakistan to sort out by itself. They have to, I think, walk the talk.
Yes.
And non-discriminatory should really be non-discriminatory. These distinctions, good Taliban, bad Taliban, they just won't work any longer. And if they don't learn a lesson now, when will they learn?
Exactly. So no wonder no response, no real substantive response from India to the offer from Shahbaz Sharif. One. And two, of course, situation bears watching in Pakistan because of the multiple polycrisis, as you mentioned. So for India, it's wait and watch. And I think the watch has to be heightened going forward is what would be the watchword, I think, going forward. But thank you for this conversation. I think you couldn't have got a better insight and an overview of the multiple crises that are happening in Pakistan and the kind of blowback that the Pakistani establishment is facing on the security front, as well as, of course, on the economy and the political crisis that is brewing in that country. What happens there, anybody's guess. But for the time being, do keep watching StratNews Global. We'll bring you these conversations as and when events take place in our neighborhood. You know where to reach us. Do give us your feedback. And of course, your comments are welcome if we need to do a little more or take up some other subject that you think is worth discussing. For the time being, it's goodbye.